Welcome into Midpoint, everybody. Let us now offer to join the First Assistant Secretary for Policy at the United States Department of Homeland Security under the presidency of George W. Bush, former General Counsel of the National Security Agency, now a partner at the D.C. law offices of Steptoe and Johnson. Stewart Baker joins us. And once again, we're joined by the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Gentlemen, we only have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to make sure that we let everybody get in here on a couple of things. Mr. Baker, let me get it to you first, because Dr. Jasser and I, before the break, we had talked a little bit about the fact that America, Canada, whomever it is simply just too soft on many of the agencies here in America, many of the Islamic-connected agencies. We don't do enough to investigate them. We don't do everything we possibly can to ferret out these terrorists before they may kill somebody. Do you agree with that?
You know, if you look at what happened in Canada, I'm not sure I would agree with that, at least on the policing level. The police had encountered both of the people who carried out those attacks, had stopped both of them from going to the Middle East, probably to fight with ISIS. And the attacks that they carried out were sort of improvised, low-level attacks that no one could have stopped. I'm not sure I would fault the policing that has been done here. You might fault whether enough has been done to counter the ideology of violence that makes Islamic converts in particular so susceptible to carrying out these attacks.
Then, in your opinion, then, you bring up a very good point about countering the ideology. Again, and this is something that we've discussed. How, then, do we counter it? What is the most effective manner? Let's take the rules off the table here for a moment. Take the handcuffs off and say that we have the ability to be able to do what needs to be done to break that ideology. In your opinion, Mr. Baker, what do we do?
Well, I do think that one of the problems is that many of the Islamic groups, like CARE, have grabbed hold of the old civil rights doctrines and styles and ideologies to say, if you think we should be more respectful of the American way of life, you're an Islamophobe, and we shouldn't tolerate that. But I think, frankly, with attacks of the kind that we're seeing now, I would spend a fair amount of time emphasizing what losers these guys are. They had been complete failures at life, and they carried out attacks that were indistinguishable from the sorts of things that an ordinary nutcase would carry off. And I think a little bit of mockery is probably in order.
All right, Dr. Jasser, I'm going to bring that to you as well, because I tend to think that Stewart Baker is right. It seems to many times what we're talking about here is ISIS and other groups. They are breeding the malcontents, the disenfranchised, the drug-addled, and those are the ones that they go after. So are these the ones that we need to focus on, while at the same time trying to break this Islamophobe side of things, break through that, and then get to the killers?
Well, I think that's one small part of it, but you've got the Afia Siddiquis of the world, Lady Al-Qaeda from MIT. You've got Tariq Mahena in Boston. The Boston bombers weren't exactly as strange. And there are many that actually don't fit that profile, that are part of an ideological movement. And just as in the Cold War, while McCarthy tactics were wrong to try to outlaw the Communist Party, we never lifted them up as being representatives of democracy. We said that they were basically part of the global communist ideology.
Who's lifting them up, though? Who is the one, in your opinion, that is lifting them up and bringing them more credence than they deserve?
By not challenging the media, the government, by not challenging Islamism as a supremacist ideology and letting them say that, well, Islam can have a democratic Islamic state, and saying the problem is not violence, we let these imams put forth ideologies in the mosques that are anti-American, and we don't demand that they not only be not anti, but pro-American, and give a narrative that says America defends Muslim freedoms. And they give the opposite, which is saying that we're Islamophobic, and it pushes those youth away from America.
Stewart, I got about a minute left. Let me get it to you for a final thought here. Is it time then, I mean, are we doing enough? And not only that, but do you fear that as we continue to play the political correctness game here and dance around this issue, that we are going to see more lone wolves, and we are going to see, again, a major concerted effort to kill a lot of people at once?
I think that we'll see lone wolves carrying out these kinds of attacks because they get off on the sense that they've joined a movement that the rest of society is afraid of. But the biggest fear is that they will end up in the Middle East in a safe haven where they can be recruited and trained to carry out a much more serious attack.
We have to make them feel less safe, correct?
Absolutely.
And that perhaps is the one thing that maybe we have done far too much, and maybe some of the political correctness has led us to do incorrectly as well. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and Stewart Baker, gentlemen, I thank you both for being here for some very frank comments. We will have this discussion again.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Millennials are about to rule the world, certainly the world economy, or so some would have us believe. That is coming up after the break. And later on this hour, those who rule their little corner of the world with a bottle in hand. Elected officials as well. You can only guess that it means another trip to Outland. That's coming up next, right here on Midpoint, where we question everything.
If you have met